All right, this is Joe Miller. Welcome to episode number 3 of the Dirty Burfield. The first episode with a guest.
A guest. I feel honored, Joe.
Thank you. So, this is Bart Sutherland, and we are on Vancouver Island.
In the beautiful town of Cobble Hill, British Columbia, where I lay my head to rest every night.
The thriving metropolis.
Yeah.
Cool. Have we officially met before, like just recently? Did we meet at one of the Island Cups?
I don't believe so. I believe the first time that we actually crossed paths was when my good friend Alex was building a buggy in honor of a friend of ours who passed away, and you had a set of beadlocks for sale that he needed, and so I ran up to Nanaimo and snagged them from you.
Yeah, okay.
For the EMB buggy, because it got him into beadlocks and 17s, but for Dana 60s as opposed to Toyota bolt patterns. So
yeah, I was unloading
that
those.
was the very first time that we had actually personally met.
Had interaction other than online on forums.
I mean, and that was always just the odd here or there commenting on the same thread on a forum or something, right? But
cool.
yeah, no, so it's I guess it's been 4 years-ish kind of thing, somewhere in there, that we've actually known each other face to face.
Yeah.
And just in recent, I guess the last year or so kind of thing, we've definitely
gotten to know each other a little more.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it later, but I definitely want to have a chat with you because I think you have some really important words for people in regards to insurance and just things to not take for granted. And I was fascinated, one, about your personal strength going through, some of the challenges you've gone through, and we'll get into that. But to kind of kick it off, I'm always curious to know how people kind of got into Toyotas. Like, do you remember the first Toyota you ever bought, or how you got into them?
I have a memory from, I believe I was like 2.5 years old, and it was my father coming home in a brand new SR5 Tercel 4-wheel drive wagon.
Yes.
And that was my first Toyota specific memory. And after that, at the age of probably 3.5, my mom's friend bought a Celica GT.
Yeah.
And I can remember that, and I can remember from like that moment on in life, people who refer to it as a Celica, because that's not what we call them in Canada. Always just kind of grinded my gears a little bit. And so I kept it in my memory from like that day. And I was...
Do people in the States pronounce it Celica?
They call it Celica in the States.
Celica.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things. And so you never know. I mean, being in North America, the crossovers happen. And some people up here might call it a Celica too. But to me, because it was explained to me as a Celica the first time that I'd ever heard it, that was what it was.
That was the way it was supposed to be said. Yeah.
So it's and so that was kind of that was my very first introduction to Toyotas in general. Past that, friends, family members had Toyotas as I was growing up. We personally didn't have one in the family after that Tercel, and then my sister 20 years ago met her husband, and he was into older Datsuns, Nissans, Toyotas, kind of anything that was of import and of cheap kind of that type of vehicle. And he got me into the 4x4 Toyotas, and he's since long given up on them and moved on to other parts of his life, and I think I'm deeper in now than I've ever been. So it's I guess it's been a 20-year passion for me in the Toyota specific game. I'm not necessarily a brand specific person, but I will always lean towards a Toyota over most other things.
Yeah. So being the Dirty Burfield and Toyota 4x4 specific, because I know you have some pretty cool stuff that's non-Toyota 4x4, which is awesome. When did you get your first Toyota 4x4?
My first.
And what was it?
I was actually in Ontario. I was working in Northern Ontario and got a phone call from my now brother-in-law, who was my sister's boyfriend at the time, and he said, "Look, I've got this 1981 SR5 Toyota that's sitting in the driveway, and it needs an owner. And I thought of you. It needs some frame repairs. And I mean, at this point, I couldn't weld. I had a mechanical background because I had done mechanics in high school, and so I wasn't shy around wrenches or anything. But I mean, the majority of the skills needed to really dive into a Toyota 4x, especially a first gen, weren't in my toolbox yet. So
Yeah.
it's but yeah, so I think I sent money, like it might have even been like Western Union or something like totally random like that, because that's how you sent money back then.
Yeah.
Sent money out west and said, all right, I'll see it when I get home. I mean, like, I don't even think I got a picture of the thing. It was like a poor description. And yeah, so I sent the money back, and I worked away the rest of the summer and headed back to BC to come and find this Toyota 4x. And it turned out that it was my elementary school bus driver, so the school bus driver's car or Toyota, and I had known it from like the time that I was riding the bus at like 7 years
No
old.
way.
And so, and it had been his from then on, and the frame rotted out of it basically, and he got rid of it, and my brother-in-law found it, and yeah, it ended up being mine. And so I started digging away at it and trying to like, you know, scab up some frame repairs here and make it work and this and that. And
How much did you pay for it?
I paid $900 for it.
Yeah.
And because it was an 81, it had solid front axle. There was no box on it whatsoever, I don't think.
Okay.
The cab was reasonable, but the floors were pretty much gone. And I mean,
It was a project.
it was a project
Way over your head at the time.
at the time, like so far over my head. But thankfully, I had my brother-in-law who done this a couple times already, and you know, knew his way around them fairly well. And so he kind of helped me out a bit. We picked away at it, and then out of nowhere, an 85
Yeah.
pickup.
The coveted
Up here.
85 back then.
Yes, the EFI, solid axle, you know, I was a regular cab, long box, and it popped up for, I believe it was $1,100. So I don't even remember how I swung it, because we're talking like this was huge money to a guy like me back then, right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have,
How old were you ish?
I would have been 19?
Yeah.
19, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, like this was like one vehicle, let alone two vehicles, let alone three vehicles, because I was actually driving a Corolla at the time too.
Yeah.
As my daily driver while trying to build this 81. And so my stepfather needed a vehicle. So I finished the 81 in the sense of putting a rack that I made up out of muffler, like pipe.
No way.
Oh yeah, like not even like angle iron, like muffler. He's a carpenter, so I like scabbed together this flat deck made out of bed frames, muffler tubing, and some like random wood, and somehow made it all work and put it together and made this truck work for my stepdad. And he passed along the money needed to get me to the point where I could buy this 85.
Yeah.
And then from there on, it was just on from that moment. Like I couldn't do anything in life without thinking about that truck. Like
Yeah.
I would get out of that truck and walk away from it and look back like 15 times before I walked into the store. You know, like there's just something about that 85 body style. It's the Back to the Future truck. Right?
Yeah.
Like it was the truck from the movie of my childhood.
Yeah.
And the body lines on them, for whatever reason, like I just fell head over heels in love with that thing and slowly started building it up. I think the very first thing I did was put a welded rear end in it, and the box was munched, like just rotten.
Yeah.
So again, I built a bed framed flat deck because bed frames are plentiful and
This was
ridiculously strong, it turns out. because they, yeah.
The bed frame flat deck, I can't say I've ever seen one, or
Yeah.
maybe I wouldn't have even known.
Probably wouldn't have known. Yeah, it just turned into one of these like, okay, well, this is, yeah, well, I need some angle iron cheap or free. And I was on a small island on the west coast of Canada, and, you know, like there wasn't a steel supply place. There was like a recycling center that had a metal bin, and so you just started digging through it, or you like asked the guy at the coffee shop, like,
That's
hey, you got
awesome.
random rusty steel laying around your house, you know, like that's what we were after. And so yeah, I put a flat deck on it, and I think I ended up getting a stick of 1.25 inch square tube and a bunch of bed frames. So the lower portion of the frame was the angle iron from the bed frame, and I used the square tube above it to make it look like
the rails
below looked like it was
square tube.
or something, you know? And it had plywood, like it didn't even get like timber. It was like half inch plywood as a deck because that's how broke I was. And I don't think I had enough bed frame to do like straight sides the whole way back, because I ended up doving the back corners on like a fairly harsh angle,
Yeah.
and really like short of where you would normally have like 45 to corner or something, like a 60. And I'm pretty sure it's because if I went any further,
You wouldn't have had the metal.
Right? Like, so I put that all together, got the welded rear in it, and just started playing with it, heading up the mountain and getting into the dirt as much as I could, and found some 33.95 tires for it. Still had the push-pull steering, and it was all stock, and suspension wise. So I think shackles were next in the back, and an add-a-leaf in the front. And I remember discovering...
Sweet ride.
Yeah, it had a brake too. I remember I had a mad brake when I first did it, and couldn't see anything at night because I didn't bring in the headlights. And I remember I had an add-a-leaf for the front from somewhere, but I didn't have the like drop Z-link for the steering.
Yeah.
To, like, do it right, and without it, you really couldn't get the alignment like at all. So I found the drop Z-link like in like a scrap pile, like covered in mud, like grass growing through it. I think it was just one of these like random like pieces, and I don't think I knew what it was at the time even.
What a find.
And yeah, I mean, it's probably one of those things that you couldn't put your hands on if you tried now, but I mean, they used to be plentiful.
Yeah, those were the things.
That was how you lifted your
pretty sure I bought, I think ProComp sold them. I think I had a ProComp one.
Yeah, and
mine was zinc plated.
Yeah, this one would have been zinc plated at some point in its life. I remember having to spray it and heat it, and like to try to get the corrosion out of that adjustment nut that tightens up
to be able to move it.
To be able to move it. And yeah, so I got all that together, got the add-a-leaf in the front and the 33s, and gosh, I think I poured over like a Monroe shock book guide length, like in mounting stuff that I'd found online somewhere, to try to find a shock that I could put in this truck that I could afford.
Yeah.
Because there was just no money like putting gas and insurance on the thing really to try to make something happen. I think it was like Ford T-Bird, like 1980 Ford T-Bird shocks or what ended up like working, and they were like $17 each or something.
Nice.
Right? And just something, but it worked, and yeah, it got me out on the trail and got me to join one of the local forums in the area, and yeah, from that point forward, it was just an endless dig for parts, search for parts, find stuff for cheap, trade this. You know?
I think that's a classic Toyota. Maybe it's just being young. Could just be being young, but it's funny, you know. Everyone I talk to, and it's funny hearing you say these things because it reminds me of all the things that I did. The bed frame, though, is classic. I love that. Do you remember learning to weld? Like, how did you learn to weld? Because for me, learning to weld was mind-blowing. Like, once you learn how to do that, your entire world changes.
So it was my brother-in-law, and he had a MIG-Pack 15, I think, like just the little guy.
Yeah.
And he had done some welding, and he had a I think his truck was on 33s at this point. He had an 86 that he had sassed.
Yeah.
So he had some knowledge, and he got help from friends that were welders, and so he kind of passed on a little bit of his knowledge
Yeah.
to me. And yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like point and shoot, and all right, well, that's not working. Maybe this will. And the biggest thing that he taught me was clean, clean, clean. Like if you're no good, you can't weld through rust or dirt or
Yeah.
stuff. Like, you know, now when I
So you had a bottle. You learned with a bottle.
I learned with a bottle,
not
yeah,
flex core.
and out with a bottle. 100% outdoor in the wind, like
Brutal.
an elevation
Yeah.
of like 1,000 feet, like, you know, like probably like the worst condition ever. But actually, a scary story is I had no appreciation or respect for welding or the sparks or the fires or the things that could be created from welding. And I had just the fuel tank filler neck just laying there, no cap on it, nothing.
No.
And I was making some sparks with the Sparky maker, and all of a sudden I heard woof, 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 and I flipped the helmet up and I looked over, and the fuel filler neck was like making the Olympic torch, like it was like making this noise like woof. And there just wasn't enough oxygen, I guess, for it to do its like thing that it
Kaboom thing.
to do. Yeah. And I just remember reaching over with my glove and being like, hand on top, like you go out now, and like not really thinking about it too much. I'm like, oh, I'm like flipping the helmet back down, you know, like I think I put a glove over it or something, like. But like having just no appreciation now when I like think back about that, like how stupid was I?
Oh
like,
man.
These are the things that you either learn the hard way or you take. I mean, obviously I learned from that experience, but yeah, it was just that little enough. I had enough knowledge to get myself into trouble.
Yeah.
You know? And that was about it. And then I moved away from. I was living on Salt Spring Island, and I moved to Victoria, and I had met who's one of my best friends now, a guy by the name of Alex, and I'd met him through my brother-in-law. The local forum used to do a New Year's Day or New Year's night wheel every year on Salt Spring, and so Alex came over for one of these, and he was a few years younger than me. He was kind of the young guy. I think he was 18 at this time, or he was a young guy compared to the rest of us. He might have even been younger than that, but he came over and like we kind of met, and he lived in Victoria, and so like one thing led to another, and I kind of like not necessarily pushed myself as like a friend to him, but it's like, hey, like you're into Toyotas, I'm into Toyotas, like let's like help each other out here, you know, like I see you fighting by yourself, I'm fighting by myself, like let's like
combine forces.
And so he was the one who taught me how to do brakes on the back of a Toyota, because I just never dug into them before, you know, like I'd done drum brakes before, but didn't know like where all the springs went. And I mean, these were things that scared the crap out of me back then. And he bought a little 130 amp, 115 volt Clark welder, a MIG welder, and I needed to do some work and some welding work, and he's like, oh, do you know how to use one of these things? Like, I've never used a welder. Like, he just knew that he needed a welder
so got one.
Go further, right?
Yeah.
Found it on like Craigslist or something like that. And, so yeah, he's like, yeah, do you know how to use one? I was like, yeah, I've done a little bit of this, you know, like I'm sure I could sort something out. And so yeah, I did like some uprights, or it was like maybe a headache rack, or it was something that took a tremendous amount of abuse down the road, because I never actually ever changed the bed frame / square tube flat deck out for anything else. That's what I tied all the rest of my cage into.
Right.
So these welds were put to the test for years to come after that, and they held up somehow, and it ended up being that all of that is what led to me chasing a career in welding, actually. And again, met through a friend of Toyota's who was put an ad up looking for basically a shop laborer at an aluminum welding shop. but it was posted on one of the local 4x4 forums, and so I moved to Victoria, needed a job, and was kind of like, all right, and so I went in, and you kind of looked out the window at my truck and was like, all right, well, yeah, I mean, cool, Toyota, sweet, all right, yep. You wheel, okay, yeah, sure, we can hire you, and that's kind of how I got the job too. So
cool.
And that just opened up more and more doors and more people, and gosh, I mean, when I think about how many people I've met strictly because of Toyota four-wheel drives, gosh, there's got to be like 300 more.
Yeah.
People that I call my best friends
Yep.
to this day.
Yeah.
People that I haven't seen in 5 years even, that I could pick up the phone right now, call them, say I need help, and they would be there in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
Whether it was Toyota related or not. I mean, like, it's a family. Like, it's actually like almost, it's overwhelming me a little bit now that I think about it, because all of these names, all these people, all of these, like, experiences are all flooding back into my mind right now, just thinking about it.
I was just having this conversation the other day with someone, and it really is, you totally end up building a family. And there's something that happens, when you're wheeling. If you've ever spent any amount of time with someone on the trail wheeling, you break something, you get out, like, those memories and the bond that is forged doing that is hard to beat. Like, it's unreal, and it's a fast bond too. Like, there's people that I've been out on the trail with, didn't really know before, but when you break something, you figure it out, fix it, get back out. I probably really, even with some of those people, haven't spent too much time, but I would consider them a friend. Like, if they called, even out of the blue, like, these are people that I haven't talked to in years. Yep. If somehow they got a hold of me, or I saw that something happened to them, I would absolutely reach out.
Yep.
And it's amazing. Like, that, I think that's one of the cool things about wheeling in general, because I don't want to say it's just a Toyota thing. Yeah. But it's a way where bonds and friendships are made very quickly in kind of a way that we don't typically get in this day and age. Like,
absolutely.
You can go for drinks with someone, you go for coffee, whatever. Play Call of Duty with someone, like whatever. But when you're out in the bush,
well, and you're not going home because your truck is dead.
Yeah.
Or like, it is physically, like, if you do nothing, you are not getting home.
Yeah.
You were sleeping in the woods. Like, there's something about that, like, yeah, and no man left behind kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
It definitely,
it brings out people's true colors.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know about you, but I've definitely had some experiences where there are people that aren't friends, mainly because they don't have that attitude. It's like, oh man, like, I'm tired, like, I'm out. Good luck, guys. And it's kind of like, it's like the unspoken code. Like, you just don't do that, dude. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You signed up for this.
Yeah. Or if you are doing that, then you're like heading out and you're coming back with the parts that we need. Like, no, I mean, I think we did an IFS rear axle swap on the trail in my old rig once. Yeah. Because I snapped a shaft. And it was a narrow...
Yeah, so you didn't have a shorter shaft.
And somebody had a complete housing with shafts but no third in the back of their truck, like down on the logging road. And they weren't wheeling their like daily driver truck, and this axle housing was in the back or something. And one thing led to another. I remember my truck being jacked up on like 6 spare tires or something, like everyone's spare, and like under the frame rails, and it just being like a muddy like ditch that we were working in, and a winch cable up to a tree keeping the truck from tipping over, and like undoing U-bolts and drive shafts and pulling thirds and like fishing chunks of axle shaft out of the third to get the new shaft. Like, it was just
a gong show, but a lifetime memory, and bonds were forged.
And bonds, absolutely. And I finished the trail that I was only 300 or 400 feet in when I snapped the shaft, right? Yeah. Like, but I wouldn't have been able to go backwards without a shaft, like my truck would have been left in the woods, and we
Yeah.
weren't, I don't know, nothing's that far away where we live, but in the grand scheme of things, it was about as far away as I wheeled from home, which was an hour and a half drive on the highway, you know,
Yeah.
in a double locked truck on 36s, like
Yeah.
caged, and yeah, no, so yeah, some of those memories are will forever be with me, and I just hope that one day I can try to kind of pass along that same feeling to my kids.
Yeah.
Right? Where so they can understand why I have the friends I have, or these
Yeah.
like, oh, Dad, how do you know that guy? Well, I know him through Toyotas.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know that guy? Well, I know him through Toyotas too, right? And half the time my kids haven't met somebody yet. And for the first time, they're like, oh, how do you know him? And it's, well, I met him on the trail, or,
Yeah.
you know, I wheeled with him, or he sold me tires, or I sold him tires, or, like, you know, there's,
Yeah.
I think that's,
It's definitely a family. It's family.
yeah, it totally is. It totally is.
So, I want this to kind of be a part of the Dirty Burfield. There has to be some kind of slandering other vehicles because it is Toyota specific.
Yeah.
And now I remember. So Alex, it's actually funny. I'll tell you a little bit about because I don't really know Alex. I know him because there was the first Mainline Cup, and all the island boys came over to the Mainline Cup, and Alex was one of those. Dan, dirtbag. So these guys, like, I was just getting into wheeling, and Mainland Cup was kind of my first exposure to what a Toyota can take.
Right.
Like
just
it,
the beating.
yeah, like it is a beating. Like it blows my mind how hard you can be on a Toyota, and that was back then. It was Smurfields were all the rage because longs were like crazy expensive, or they may not have even existed. If they did, they were probably just out of this world expensive.
Yeah.
And probably timing too of like being at that age where $1,000 like the world, right?
Yeah.
Where if you could hunt down Travis Rankin and get your $40 Smurfields
Yes, exactly.
with your spare set of bursts that you pillaged from somewhere, then you're golden. Then you could run 35s and you could hammer on pretty hard. And actually, it's pretty amazing. As a side note, Smurfields were pretty amazing.
Oh, they're like ridiculous for what they actually took. I mean, and like it was, yeah, like.
And for like, I don't know if anyone knows, because I think Smurfields were pretty like like I think they made it into kind of the pirate 4x4 world. I think people knew what they were, because I think they were being shipped out. Like people were sending cores in.
I don't remember. I can't remember exactly how many sets were done, but like. It's something I should ask.
I'd be curious to know kind of like how far-reaching it was, or if it was just this.
I think
whoever knew stuff about
concept,
metallurgy.
The concept of them was born here, I believe, and I mean I don't want.
Because I think Marlin made some, didn't they?
They nailed some, but they didn't have the
ring welded on the outside.
Welded on, which is what made the biggest difference, because you could soften them, but then
they're too soft, split. Yeah,
split. So you had to have that
ring on there.
That ring originally was a garage door spring.
No way.
Yes, because
That's
it was like tempered or whatever, spring steel, right?
Right.
So it was like super hard.
See, I remember Travis Rankin moved to the mainland.
Yep.
And then I had heard about him, like, okay, I need to find this Travis Rankin guy to get him my Smurfields. Yeah. And I hunted him down, and I remember giving them to him. I think it was $40 a piece, or maybe it was $40 total. I can't remember. But it had to be done.
Yeah.
Found him, gave him to him, and like I kind of was thinking I would like be able to watch, but he's like, no, you stay here. And he went and hid in his shop because it was a secret process that he was like guarding with his life.
Yeah.
That was so funny.
Yeah.
But back to Toyota's being able to take a beating. I remember at that Mainline Cup watching Jeeps break. Like, there's a few stupid things. There's a lot of stupid things about Jeeps, but one of them that I learned, and I just kind of fell into Toyotas. Like, I didn't make any decision that I was gonna be a Toyota guy. So having kind of fallen into it, I'm grateful for that because, times where I was wheeling with Jeeps, not to say that Toyotas never break, but, my first experience was on a trail where rear axle shaft broke, and then the entire axle and wheel came out of the truck.
Decided to exit the vehicle.
And he was dead in the water.
Yeah.
Like, he literally could not do anything until he had another shaft, and he had to dig it out. Like, it just seemed like a huge headache. And I also found it kind of ridiculous that he broke a rear shaft, because I think on this one it was like 33s or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that was one issue. And then the other thing was hubs.
Yeah.
Like in that mainline cup where I had met Alex, I remember this like super built Jeep was just like slowly crawling up, and then boom, it broke, and I was like, oh, what broke? I wasn't even doing anything, and it was the hub, like locking hub just blew out on it.
Exploded, yeah.
And meanwhile, later on that day, the Toyotas are just rev limiter, bouncing off of everything. And granted, it's a 22RE, but still. Like,
well, I think
just
beating. The beauty is that power to strength ratio.
Yes,
right?
100%.
Overbuilt,
underpowered,
reliable as hell.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, there's something to be said to that too.
And being cheap, I think the thing that I really appreciated about Toyotas, and I think most people appreciate, is you run it's stock dual cases.
Exactly.
Stock rear shafts.
Yes.
It's like stock everything except for you throw in your chromo axles up front, and you're golden.
And buy a few adapters to bolt some some stock parts.
Yeah. And then there's nothing more satisfying, I think. I don't know if you've had this experience. I'm sure you have. There's nothing more satisfying than outwheeling really built Jeeps.
Oh, I love it.
It's the best. You got your shitty old Toyota that you scabbed together.
Pennies on the dollar,
And then you have the classic Jeep that is just, they've gone out, they've bought all the parts for it, and something breaks, and you get your whole day of wheeling just happy that you don't own a Jeep.
Yeah. Well, I've attacked the 4x4 scene in a number of different ways. My very first 4x4 was a Nissan, and man, that's like as bad as buying a Dodge Dakota. I'm sorry, Dodge Dakotas, you're fine truck maybe in stock form, but there's zero aftermarket. There's not a lot you can do. I mean, at least with the Nissan, it was reliable 4-cylinder import, but poor suspension design, no lockers, no aftermarket anything. If you want to sass it, your pumpkin's on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Right. So I got out of that game really quick, and that was more of a cheap vehicle. I bought a dirt bike. I needed something to haul a dirt bike with when I was young, and I was a Datsun kid at that point because I'd owned 510s. So, but then I did the Toyota game, stayed in the Toyota game for years, and I ended up working for a suspension shop locally that was not geared Jeep only by any means, but the owner's vehicle was a Jeep, and I mean, our logo had a Jeep on it. And I'd always loved Cherokees. I still do. I'm a fan of Cherokee. For what they are, you get a lot of vehicle out of them. But they're obviously not a Toyota, but I decided to build a Cherokee for the sake of it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I had fun with it.
We'll just stop this podcast now.
It was good in the moment, and did the purposes I needed it to, but it wasn't ever my passion, I think actually what's funny is that Jeep got traded away for a twin turbo right hand drive Toyota Aristo from Japan. Just straight across, so that my buddy could get the Aristo for a better price than what the guy was selling the car for.
Nice.
So yeah, I told my buddy what I wanted for the Jeep. He essentially bought the Jeep from me and traded it to this guy immediately for this Toyota so that he could get his Toyota dreams further. And I was like, I'm loving that this Jeep is now turning into a furtherment of your Toyota adventures, right? So I played the game. There is, in my opinion, nothing better on the planet to start with, learn with, pour all your money into. It's a platform that is recognized around the world as one of the best. I mean, there's TV shows regarding how much beating
they
Toyota
can
take,
yeah.
right? Like it's so.
I do have to confess that it's funny that you say. I'd actually be curious to know, like, for people that were getting to wheeling back then, it was all about the solid axle. Mm-hmm. So if you're kind of stuck in the era where like solid axle swaps weren't very commonplace, and it was, you really were looking for the older solid axle trucks, I think a lot of people considered Jeeps. Like when you're learning, you learn like how much better a solid axle is. And Cherokees, I actually remember I was considering getting a Cherokee, mainly because it had some wheelbase to it. And no, I probably didn't know anything about that back then, but I definitely preferred it way more over a Jeep. Like it didn't look, I guess I looked at a Cherokee and it seemed kind of like different to wheel than
a YJ or the TJ or than the typical.
And I don't know if you feel this way, but like there's just something about Toyotas, like because they're different, they're kind of like the ugly stepchild, I feel like. Yeah. Like the underdog.
Yep, absolutely.
And I feel like a lot of us have the underdog chip on the shoulder. Like,
yep, absolutely.
It's not the...
I've also never been one to follow the crowd, per se.
Yeah, with kind of anything.
And so it's, like the Jeep was a crowd where the Toyotas were like a small gathering.
Yeah.
Maybe, like
and I think that maybe that's something that keeps the Toyota family together. Because I would say that I think Toyota owners are pretty down to earth. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like that's obviously a blanket statement, but I feel like having met so many Toyota owners that they're pretty down to earth, and no one's like anti-Jeep, like, oh, we hate Jeeps and Toyotas so much better. Like it's more razzing. Yeah. But
I can say the tables turn the other way though, because a Jeep guy will tell you through and through, time and time again, how much better his Jeep is.
Yeah, but I don't think a Toyota guy won't bite.
No, and it's exactly,
because a Toyota guy will just smile and nod, like, yeah, buddy.
Good one.
Yep. Yeah, buddy. Yeah. That's I don't know how to describe it, but I think that's pretty common in the Toyota world, where it's just kind of, you just know, like, and it's been proven through and through by your own personal experience on the trail. It's not like a douchey, like, oh, I hate Jeeps because they're Jeeps. Yeah. It's just a genuine personal experience on the trail.
Yeah, like I've gotten home because I drove a Toyota. I haven't slept in the woods because I drove a Toyota, right? Like I made it to work on time. Toyota.
Yeah.
That's just, I've never left a Toyota in the woods, and I can think of probably a dozen times that we've had to leave a Jeep in the woods that was wheeling with us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, that's no hate. It could have been all the Jeep drivers' like abilities or inabilities to drive that caused all of it.
Yep.
Could have been nothing to do mechanically, but I can't remember leaving a Toyota out there where you've left a Jeep.
Yeah.
Right? So it's...
And it's funny that it seems like, I think the reason why it's easy to just kind of pick at Jeeps is
well, that's embarrassing.
Oh, that's all right.
There we go. Got that thing.
is because they bite.
Right.
Right? I remember this time when like remote control rock crawlers were coming out.
Yep.
There was this one it was kind of like the first rock crawler remote control car that you could buy. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like, it was big, like it was really big,
Yeah.
and it didn't have any of the like regular remote control car stuff. Like it was a Walmart special
Yeah.
kind of thing. Oh, I can't remember the name of it.
Right. Was it a new
Yeah,
Jeep? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I got one of those, and I was posting on the forum, and the first thing I did was I hacked it all apart and made it look like a Land Cruiser instead of a Jeep.
Yeah.
And I posted. I remember posting on the forum, and I made some comment like, "Dear God, the first mods I had to do was make it not a Jeep.
Right.
This is a Land Cruiser now."
Yeah.
And the heat that I got from that post, it was like
Yeah.
I was making fun of someone's child, right? Just like I couldn't believe it. But then the problem is that it feeds the stereotype, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
It does.
okay, you can't make fun of Jeeps because they'll just it's like they'll try to burn you at the stake if you say anything.
Right.
It's like, yeah, they'll crucify you if you say something bad about Jeeps.
Right.
And then that's what makes it fun.
And I mean, I've been there time and time again and over. And I mean, the majority of the, like I said, I'm not brand specific. I'll deal with anybody. I don't care. As
Like-
long as your vehicle is equally as capable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, this all being said, I haven't been on a trail in, I want to say 5 years behind the wheel myself now.
Yeah.
And probably 2-ish years, maybe, or there was a 3-year gap in there that I wasn't in a 4x4 at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, but I may as well add this in that I was this was coming up on 5 years. I was hit head on by a motorhome commuting to work, and sustained a traumatic brain injury, shattered pelvis, punctured lung. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. I didn't walk for a year and a half. Was in a coma. I mean, about as bad as it can get. So I thought that my dreams of any type of life or quality of life at that point were over.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting in the wheelchair, talking to my wife, and just, I think I might have been crying, having an emotional kind of breakdown, and I just said to her, like, look, if I can get anything back in my life, I just want to be able to play with Toyotas and have a smile on my face. And I've managed to get back to that. Like, I've got a wheeler that I'm slowly putting back together. It was actually my good buddy Alex. It was that same rig that you would have met him in. He was basically ready to cut it apart, and I was sitting in a wheelchair and, driving myself around with a power stick, and said, like, you can't cut that thing apart. Like, it has too much history, it has too many memories in it for me. Like, this is the rig that pushed me to push myself. This is, like, these are and he said, all right, if you want it, it's yours, but I'm giving it to your son so that you can't ever get rid of it. It's
Cool.
his choice to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so that's the rig that I'm now putting back together.
So I want to stop you there because I want to go back, because I think it's really important for people to understand how serious your accident was. So you're driving a 80.
I was driving a 1986 Toyota 1-ton 2-wheel drive pickup truck.
Yeah. And you're on the highway.
Yeah, headed to work. Just entering an intersection with a green light, sort of cross street on the highway, and a 35-foot motorhome decided that it was his turn to pull through the light, and he turned left in front of me 50 feet before I entered the intersection. I hit him head on at 85 kilometers an hour, according to the crash report. Had the seatbelt, basically the impact was so hard that the front left corner, the marker light of the Toyota, was pretty much touching the firewall. The firewall was pushed back within inches of the back of the cab, the entire cab, and all of that was pushed back into the box a foot or two. Somehow the impact was hard enough that it ripped the seatbelt out of the floor. I mean, if there's a strong part of a Toyota, it's where that seatbelt bolt goes through.
Yeah.
And yeah, this truck had no rust. It was mint, but so yeah, and it ejected me out the passenger door and into the road, where I then proceeded to have numerous seizures. My right arm was the bone under my bicep was shattered, so there was nothing holding my arm together other than the muscle, and no feeling left in that arm. I went a year and a bit without that arm or hand even functioning whatsoever because the radial nerve was severed. I was basically given the worst possible prognosis long term. When I was in the coma, they told my wife that there was a good chance that I probably wouldn't wake up, and if I did remember anything or have any quality of life for her to be happy, I mean, they basically were prepping her for the worst. And I woke up, I think it was 9 or 10 days after, and part of me was still in there. I said some rather rude things to one of the nurses and asked her why there were certain things inside of my body, tubes in places, and she hit the button to put me back under because it's all controlled by medication at that point, I guess. And over the course of the next 4 days, they slowly brought me back, and angry. I woke up angry apparently, and I don't remember a lot of this. I don't remember the actual accident itself, but the brain injury has been the hardest one to get over. The physical stuff has been not simple by any means, brutal.
So what is I mean, when you shared the story with me the first time, I mean I'm amazed by it every time, but your diagnosis was that you weren't gonna walk again.
Yeah.
Like, let alone, like, you were gonna be a vegetable,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
You sure as hell weren't gonna walk again.
No, that wasn't on the forecast.
And not that you're home free, but no one can see this in the podcast, but when I'm talking to Bart and when I see him, it's very easy for me to forget that anything's even happened, because there's nothing
There's no
obvious. I mean, I'm not sitting here talking to you as you're in a wheelchair.
No. I'm talking in a chair that. Yeah, no, it's
So you went from the worst diagnosis, waking up, your life forever being changed.
Yeah.
But since that point, you talked to Alex. You said he couldn't get rid of that truck. And do you think that working on Toyotas, I mean, you've told me before that has been a guiding star to...
So much so. I had a lot of faith in my knowledge over the years that I'd developed in Toyotas, and like Toyota specific knowledge and like things that you can do that doesn't make sense and it doesn't look right on paper, but it totally works once you bolt all the random bits together. And so I, having lost kind of that 15 years of passion, or potentially have lost, I mean, that was a big thing to me, was like that. Like, do I just have to say goodbye to that? Is that over? And then by holding on to that like little bit, that glimmer of hope that I could get back to the thing that really I'd been the most passionate about in life, was what kept me going. And the Toyota that I was driving in the accident ended up getting put in my driveway and sat in my driveway for 2 years, I think, under a tarp. Something like that. It was a long time. And one day I finally just decided that it needed to be torn down. There was, well, put it this way, there was a good 22 RE, or potentially parts of a good 22 RE left in it, so it could not just go to the record. you don't throw out 22 REs. Come on now, right? Like, it had a brand new head on it. If nothing else, that was still going to be okay. I couldn't, and that, I mean, that was the motivation. That's kind of funny, but that I got it brought up to my shop from a friend, stuck his winch cable under the front of it and cinched it up tight to his bumper and pushed it backwards up my driveway and into my shop. And I think I took the next 2 months. I mean, still pretty crippled. Like,
Yeah.
Inventing new ways to support things, or
Yeah.
and I stripped that truck down to, like, I kept every 10 mil bolt.
Yeah.
Like, if there was a usable piece on that truck, it was saved. And that is what showed me. It was at that point that I realized that, yes, it's still there. The knowledge is still there. Just because I have a hard time remembering things post accident doesn't mean that the memories or the knowledge that was pre-accident isn't still in there when I dig for it a little bit.
Yeah.
Proof that I wasn't useless.
Yeah. And you need it, like you said, the brain injury has been the hardest thing. So when you're saying that, that was a godsend, and
oh my gosh,
to realize you're a functioning human being.
100%, 100%, and it really was like this.
For 2 years, did you feel like you weren't?
Like, couldn't I guess the one way to describe it is how to ruin a man is to take away any kind of knowledge or ability that of what he has, like, formed himself as. Not that I specifically, like, went after being a Toyota,
But that was your identity.
that was my identity.
Yeah.
You know, like, people called me for Toyota questions. I worked at a Jeep shop, but I was the Toyota guy.
Yeah.
I've since recovering, and because I'm still in a state of recovery. I'm not recovered, and I don't know if I ever will be fully recovered. But I bought, I don't even know how many Toyotas since, I think 12 since the. But that's, like I said to my wife, if there's one thing that's going to keep me happy that I want to do is I want to play with Toyotas, and if I can't keep all of them, I want to keep them alive, kind of thing, right? So,
yeah.
But I think I'm over 50 Toyota 4x4s. There's somewhere in that extreme number, you know.
Yeah. And
that's just 4x4s. Like,
yeah, it's not even the
that's an
non 4x4
an
stuff.
equal number of vintage and other Toyota products that have been in my life as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, the getting back to who I am, proving to myself that I'm useful, that I'm part of a community still. Yeah, I might not be or haven't been on the trail per se for the last 5 years, but answering questions on forums, giving people pointers, buying and selling Toyota parts, because all day long I have time, so I just sit on the internet and look for cheap Toyotas, you know.
Yeah.
Like, it's it was always a way of making friends. It was always a way of maybe putting some, not extra money per se in your pocket, but an ability to build your truck.
Yep.
Aside from life, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I bought these two fenders for $50 and I only needed the one, so give me 25 back, and you get the fender you need and I get the fender I need, and we're both half in what we should, you know. Like, it's that kind of game. It's always been that. Oh yeah, I have that. All right, yeah, come and grab it. Oh, you need that drive shaft yoke? Okay, $10. Yeah, it's here. You know, but if I need something back from you, like future consideration, or
yeah.
So, and it's gone that way for so long that yeah, like, I literally probably grieved more of the loss of that portion of my life than I did anything else. I really had a hard time with people not calling me per se for help or those questions anymore, because they didn't want to bug me, or they didn't.
Yeah.
But I couldn't relay that to people. How do you, like, you know? Like,
yeah. Call me.
Wasn't on Facebook. Wasn't on any of these local or social media entities to say, like, yeah, I'm still here. I still remember Toyota stuff, guys. You know?
Yeah.
But it's yeah, so it's a strange.
So right now, it's interesting that you're talking about this because right now, I noticed on one of our local boards you're helping a girl out that ended up
Yeah,
crashing in Tacoma.
that was a it's kind of a neat story in the sense of how it all is played out and worked. Not neat because it started as it was an accident on Christmas Day. One of the local local Toyota groups. A girl posted that she'd been following a friend. There's a lot of snow in our local area at that time of the year, and there isn't typically that much, so snow isn't as normal here as it is for a lot of other places. And I guess a person coming down the middle of the road and didn't give space to these two trucks. First truck caught the snowbank, second truck slid into the back of it.
Yeah.
So it was a first gen Tacoma. She hit the back of a third gen Toyota with basically the front right corner of her truck, and it folded it in, and there were spots where I measured and it was back like 13 inches. And this was like the whole rad support, the front corner marker, everything. And so she put up a post saying, crappiest Christmas ever, don't know what I'm going to do, don't really have money to dig into this or to, like I don't have collision coverage in my insurance. And so there's a lot of people saying, oh yeah, like get a hammer and smash it out and you should be able to get that sorted out and this and that. And I, since getting back out of the wheelchair and everything, I've taken up drift racing, because it's a sanctioned something that I can do at the track with a helmet and everything. And
Yeah.
I'm not as far out in the woods, so it was that was my first entry back into motorsports, if you will. So I crashed at the track and pushed in the front of my truck quite a bit. So I bought a Porta Power ram, one of the hydraulic rams. It's just a manual ram, and it pushes metal back into places where you can't do it by hand.
Yeah.
So I posted a picture of this and said, look, I've done this before. I have some experience with this, like I'm a welder by trade, and worked with metal a lot, like I've always made do with nothing and made something from nothing kind of, and I've got a shop reasonably close to where your truck was crashed. And it's got a wood stove in it and I can pick away at it, like it'll help you out.
Yeah.
So yeah, one thing led to another. Nobody else kind of stepped up to the plate, and a good friend again who I met through the Toyota scene ended up going and picking up this truck for her at the place where it had been parked, and towed it over to my place and dropped it off, and I got it up into the shop, and man, the pictures didn't do the damage justice.
Really?
A body shop, well, it would have been written off if it had hit the insurance company. It would have been a write-off, because just the hours involved to
straighten it out,
remedy it. Like the inner fender was buckled, the rad support and front body mount had been rolled back and flattened and squished like 8 inches, and it just seemed like every time that I pulled off another layer of the onion, it just got
worse and worse.
Yeah, it was. So I stuck to my guns though, which was telling her that I would make it right. If nothing else, I'd make it drive for her so that she could get to and from work, And the more I worked on it, the more I realized that if I just kept putting time in, it would get better. And it just kept getting better. And then it kept getting better. And I guess I do have a lot of knowledge when it comes to this kind of stuff. I don't give myself enough credit, but I impressed myself even, you know? And those are the things that I need to motivate me to go to the next step of recovery with the physical, with the mental, with the, I proved to myself and to a whole group of people that I'm not just a useless person anymore, that I'm a useful addition to the Toyota community, that I can, and so yeah, we got her back on the road, and like the front fender that was folded in half, basically. Like, I managed to beat the thing out within an inch of its life, and yeah, you can tell that it's damaged, but
If you saw
if
it
you saw it
before,
before, there's no way that you would ever believe that this fender was the same piece of metal. You know,
no
like just
way.
certain things like that. And she was just ecstatic, like could not be happier. Like basically made this girl's year. You
Yeah.
know, and what she doesn't realize is that it probably made my year
Hmm.
because it's again that proving to myself that I can do it, and doing it with a Toyota is just that much
That much
better.
better.
Like it's yeah, like it's I get a strange, like a warm, tingly feeling when you bring something that other people have said is dead.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's garbage. Like, why would you ever put time to that? Like, no, write it off. It's over. Like, throw it out. Take a match to it. You know, like, and taking something like that where somebody has like completely like cast all doubt on it ever being anything, and then like blowing them out of the water with what
Yeah.
it turns into in the end, right? And making do with like nothing. Like she had to buy a hood because there's no way I could fix the hood. The hood just had a buckle right in the front structure.
Yeah.
That no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get it straight.
Yeah.
So she ended up having to buy a hood, but I JB welded part of the airbox back together where it had cracked, and so that she didn't have to try to source like a new airbox. And like the grill, I sheet metal screwed, and I cut up an old license plate to make the like standoffs to put the grill back where it needed to be because all the plastic was broken, but the outer shell was still there. And
Yeah.
you know, like it just these little things where somebody else would have said, no, you have to spend money, and no, that wasn't what it was about. Like, no, we have to get this functional.
Yeah.
Right?
Functional, looking clean,
Looking
so it
clean,
doesn't
so
get
that
pulled over for a VI.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
the bumper that was on it was a write-off. So I dug around the back of my shop, and sure enough, I had a 4Runner bumper from a '99 4Runner, and fit that up. But it had a gap on the top, and so I took a piece of aluminum trim that was on her old tube bumper and fastened that onto the top of this 4Runner bumper, so it filled that gap, and sunk the 4Runner bumper in so it didn't hang out too much, and trimmed it was just it all worked out so well.
Yeah.
And I've had nothing but compliments on it. Had other people bug me about helping them out with stuff too, which is awesome.
Cool.
Again, just like proving that I'm a useful part of the community, right?
Yeah.
It's uplifting in a way that I can't describe, having been through what I've been through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wish people could, see you, because it's an inspiring story. I mean, when I first heard about it, I could not believe it, and you are an inspiration, man.
Well, I appreciate that, Joe. That means a lot, man.
I do want you to give your 2 bits, because you told me this about insurance. So for anyone that's in Canada listening, I think
Yeah. So
the insurance, what people should have for coverage.
The situation that I was left with was that the gentleman who had hit me was a tourist from America, and he was from Arizona, where there's only, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, but there's only a $30,000 liability necessary to be legal on the road. So you only need to carry $30,000 worth of liability insurance.
Yeah.
And he had $300,000 worth of liability. So he was 10 times over what his jurisdiction had, but he was 3 times under what my jurisdiction requires
as a minimum.
So there's this giant gap between the two, right? And I had always carried underinsured motorist protection insurance through our local insurance provider, and it had expired, I think it was 7 days or 10 days before the accident happened. For like 7 years prior to the accident, there wasn't a single vehicle that I'd owned that didn't have this insurance on it in full. So basically, I just ended up in this in-between land of the U.S. insurance company saying that the man who hit me and was at fault for the accident was 10 times
overcovered. Yeah.
And so it just turned into this battle that wouldn't have been needed or necessary had I been on top of my insurance stuff for my vehicle. Now, the second side of that was that I just purchased a house and I didn't have a life insurance policy that covered emergency or like basically an accident. So
A brain injury yeah.
I mean, I basically would have ticked off like 7 of 10 boxes on almost any of these things for what I would have qualified for the damages, right?
Yeah.
And looking back, I beat myself up regularly that I wasn't on top of, for one, my vehicle insurance, which I was always on top of.
Yeah.
Understandable why it might have been out of my mind. I just had a baby. I had a 3-month-old son at the time of the accident. I purchased a house 4 months before that, my first house. I was driving, an hour every day to get to work. There was a lot going on in my life. So, but I can't get over that. I mean, it was only me that screwed up there, right? Like, I had some resentment towards, for one, like the woman who sold me my insurance for the vehicle.
Right.
Well, it was not her fault, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so, easy to start pointing fingers.
But I mean, when it boils right down to it, it's any insurance that you ever use will be the cheapest insurance that you ever bought.
Yeah.
That is, it's a blanket statement, but I wholeheartedly believe that now.
Yeah.
And thankfully, some good decisions, a phenomenal life, family that was very supportive. The small amount of money that I did receive from my settlement has left me in a spot where I can mess around with Toyotas 95% of the time and help friends out and, fix trucks here. But the nerve damage in my arm, something that plagues me every day.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow me to work at the capacity that I once did. And the brain injury doesn't allow me to work for money, basically, like for a job. Like I don't have a 40-hour a week. Like I collect a disability check because on paper and in a stressful situation I can't function. So
yeah,
it's hit and miss, but I guess the whole thing that it all revolves around and it all comes back to Toyotas is what the friends that have supported me through this I met via Toyota 4x4s. The jobs that have proven to me that I'm still useful, that I'm still the questions that I've been able to answer for people that make me seem like I still have a brain, like these things it's been a recurring theme through my recovery. I don't know if this is funny. I think of it as funny, and it might be a little strange, but there was a lot of Toyota truck left in my body after the accident. So technically, I am part Toyota. I have original Toyota manufactured parts still embedded in my body. The weird thing about this is that glass will eventually migrate out of the body. A lot of it is in my forehead and scalp, and so over time pieces have come out, surfaced, they kind of make a small cut, and then but I now get sad when these pieces leave my body because I'm becoming less Toyota every time one of them goes away. And it was just it's strange, like it is, but I mean, like legitimately I don't know if it's that I just embraced the fact, like that I was actually pretty damned happy that there was Toyota in me and that I was now Toyota because of who I was prior to this incident. But yeah, it's a strange place where like there's like there's foreign objects leaving your body and yet you're sad about that. But I guess that shows my passion for Toyotas. And yeah, it's
well, I think that's a good note to end the podcast on. you talked about how it's really fascinating to look back and realize how much knowledge you have accumulated over, the
Yeah.
years of dealing with things. And I know far less than you know, but I think what's really interesting is that Toyotas are something that I genuinely feel like if I can get into Toyotas, not having any background with wrenching, like my family's in medicine, I was not exposed to that at all. But it's also a brand and a platform that anyone can get into at any income level
Absolutely.
and can learn quite quickly
Yes.
how to get into wrenching and build stuff
Hmm.
and go through, within 5-6 years of, working on your truck, you can know, a ton, enough to be able to go out and reliably push your truck to the limits and know how to fix it on the trail with your 10 mil, your 12 mil, your 14 mil, your 17 and 19 mil,
Yes.
maybe a 21 if things get really hairy.
Yeah.
But that's all you need
That's
to take apart the entire truck.
It's yeah, and what I love when I show people new Toyota people things, and they're like, "Really, it's that easy?" Yeah, yeah, it
Yep.
is. Yeah, it actually is. I mean, some of the newer ones are obviously getting more complicated because some of the systems that are involved with like some of the safety systems, the electronics and things. But all in all, like they never reinvented the wheel, right? So
Yeah.
it's
So what you knew about the old stuff
Is-
still transitions through
transitions
to a lot of the
through,
new stuff. Yeah.
I mean, we just bought the wife the nicest Toyota I've ever owned,
Yep. Which is
which is a 2004 Lexus GX 470. So it's the 4Runner chassis, FJ Cruiser Prado 120 chassis, but it has the bigger front ring gear, standard V8, third row seating, and height adjustable suspension. And I am in love. Like, I never thought I would own something like this that has these features, the practicality, the luxury, it has it all.
Yeah.
And it's a 2004. I mean, we're talking like it's a 14-year-old vehicle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a guy the other day asked me, he thought it was a 2012.
Yep.
And that just like goes to show that like people's perceptions of what Toyota was onto back then is ahead of where it's at. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm through and through.
Cool. Well, thanks for your time. Really
Appreciate it,
really
Joe.
much appreciate it.
Yeah, always
And
good.
thanks for being my first guest on
Hey,
the
I,
Dirty Burfield.
I truly appreciate the honor of being your first guest.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you later. Until the next episode. Bye.